all of my crafty friends. I would like to say thank you guys again for coming to visit with me. And today I have something kind of unique for you guys. So I'm going to zoom in right quick and I want to show you something. I'm going to take a second and I'm going to bring in two pictures. And I want you to tell me, what do you see that's different? Like when you're looking at these pictures, these are some flowers that I colored up. What are you seeing? Can you tell any type of distinct difference? Anything that really stands out to you? If you can't, that's a great thing. If you think they both look great, that's wonderful, because I really feel like that might kind of bring to my point for today's video. So I'm going to bring out the Peony Blooms stamp set from Tonic Studios, and we're going to color up some images today, and I am going to show you guys how I use both Copic alcohol markers as well as Spectrum Noir alcohol markers to color images. I know that some people, I've seen videos and comments and just concerns regarding being new to alcohol marker coloring, being concerned about using certain type of markers, certain brands of markers. And now don't get me wrong, the feel and touch and the amount of work that you might have to put into a marker, it may be different. But what I want you to see is that you can create an amazing image just by having a good technique, just by using the right paper. So today I am using some Nina 80-pound Classic Crest Solar White cover stock paper to do my alcohol marker coloring. That's typically what I use for my alcohol marker coloring. Some of the things that I didn't know when I initially started doing alcohol markers. The same with taking classes, like the techniques that I have learned just in taking classes itself has taught me so much. So we've stamped out these images here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through coloring some of both images with the Copic markers and the Spectrum markers. So at the top of this sheet, I'm writing an S because I want to keep the Spectrum sheet and the Copic sheet separate. So I have the Spectrum sheet and the Copic sheet. Now we're going to start with these bottom two images. I'm going to color these images on camera. I'm going to start out fairly slowly and then I will speed up and I'm going to take you through the coloring process. So these are the colors that I am going to use in the Spectrum markers to create my floral images. And then these are the markers that I am going to use in the Copics to create a similar color blend for my florals. Okay? So we're going to move the Copics out of the way and we're going to zoom in. Now, one of the things that I like to do is when I'm trying to focus on getting a very smooth blend, I do still prefer to go lightest to darkest and darkest to lightest. And the reason that I prefer to go lightest to darkest and then darkest to lightest is because that helps me to saturate my paper so that the alcohol can blend better. So as you can see here, I'm just starting right in the crevices where I'm going to have my shadows, and I'm basically saturating that paper so that once I get to the darkest color, the paper fibers are already very ready to take all of the ink, and then I can pull it out. And that's one of the things that I have found to be most successful, especially when using my Spectrum markers, is that I need to have my paper saturated very well. I have to work on blending, you have to know how to blend with both markers. Sometimes with my Copics, I will notice that I haven't blended my colors out very well, and that's because I didn't go over the previous color enough with my my marker that I was using. So here you can see I'm now starting to pull those colors out because I want to get a little bit of a seamless blend going on with my marker. So I'm taking my time and I'm doing more than one round in coloring whatever area I'm going into. And then I'm going to bring in my lightest color, and there are times in the bigger areas that I then go backwards and do the blend again, because sometimes when you're blending out, you lose some of your color. So that is basically what I'm going to be doing with both of the markers. So now here we're going to start speeding up some, and I'm going to take you guys through the coloring of the remainder of this flower, and then we're going to go in and we're going to move on to using our Copics and trying to do the same thing. So one of the things that I will tell you guys is when I first started coloring and dabbling in markers, I didn't know a lot about markers, and one of the things that I had purchased was the Ohuhu brand from Amazon, and I just purchased a small pack just because I wanted to kind of see how they went and get a basic understanding. And they worked okay too. Like now I feel as if I would be able to create a picture with those as well. And one of the things that I will tell you is, as I have learned, technique is important. The right paper is important. If you can get those two things, then you can make a very decent and pretty image no matter what markers you're using. So after I got the Ohuhu brand, I then found the Spectrum brand, and I worked to build up an entire collection of the Spectrum markers. I will tell you that one of the things that was a difficulty for me with the Spectrum markers was the color variations. So what I saw on the cap did not always correlate to what I was getting on the paper. And so it was very, very important to have a color chart for my markers whenever I wanted to use them. And at that time, I didn't know the importance of paper. And so I wasn't getting the blends that I wanted, and I wasn't getting the color variations that I wanted. And I didn't know at that time that you could mix color families and things like that. And so it was very frustrating for me. So I kept hearing all these negative things about Spectrums, that they didn't have the light fastness, whatever that means, and that they were going to yellow over time and all of these things. And I didn't do the research for myself. I trusted what everyone said because, first of all, I didn't feel like anyone had a reason to lie to me. And then secondly, I felt like a lot of people had been in the crafting industry a lot longer than I had, so they could very much so tell me things and I could trust them. So I made the decision to start working on a Copic collection. And Copics are an investment. So I invested in Copics, and I invested in Copics, and I invested in Copics. And don't get me wrong, I love my Copics. I do. But then I started investing in classes, and I noticed that in taking my classes, Elise didn't make any exchanges or any differences. She didn't show any disparities between using Copic markers or using Spectrum markers. And she gave color combinations that you could use to get the same look with both. And it kept making me want, like, go back and forth to think about, like, are spectrums that bad? And there would be times when I was still building up my Copic collection that I would have to go back and pull some colors from my spectrum. And I noticed that as I was learning the techniques, my blends were coming out better with my spectrum markers. And I was like, wow, like what a difference technique makes. And let me say, I am by no means a Copic colorist or an alcohol marker colorist. I am not a I don't specialize in it. I just like to color. Okay. So I've noticed over time that other companies have also come out with alcohol markers. You have Arteza that has come out with markers. You have Nuvo that's come out with markers. Alta New came out with markers, and Alta New came out with markers that had the brush tip. And so I got to thinking, like, I know that Copics are especially made for, like, their professional grade markers. But with these other markers that are coming out that are specifically made for us individuals who are crafters, is it completely necessary to have the Copic markers? Now, I know that Copics are like the holy grail. They will always be the number one, but they are very professional grade. So I think sometimes, you know, if you are a card maker and you want to make cards and you want to make pretty colored images, but you don't want to invest a ton of money in markers, is there a happy medium? And I think there is. And I think that the medium is learning your techniques. I think the medium is learning your paper and what works well. And so that was what kind of got me to the point of making this video. And as the video suggests, Copics and spectrums collide. Like, I am going to use these images that I'm coloring to create a card. And I don't think the recipient is going to be able to tell that, oh, they must have used two different types of markers on this card for me. As a matter of fact, I sent this card out. It's a birthday card. And I have to say, happy 20th birthday, Kelsey D. You are such a beautiful and amazing young lady. And I hope you love your card. And I hope it puts a smile on your face. And I hope you're not offended that I used two different brands of markers to make your card. And I'm pretty sure you're going to watch this video. But, you know, I really wanted to have some time to see if I could unbiasedly create a card with both of these brands and be happy with the outcome. So that was why I kind of started the video with showing you these two images. Which image was the spectrum image? Which image was the Copic image? When you go back and look, the left image was the spectrum image and the right image was the Copic image. And I remember another thing that got me to thinking about this a lot was Kelly Latavola did a video on using the Nuvo markers and Copics. And when I went back and I waited a couple of weeks and then I went back and I looked at the end result of her card, it was very difficult for me to tell the difference between the two images she colored. You can tell if you are scrutinizing and you know the difference between markers. However, the end result was both of those images were beautiful. the end result was I would have been happy to receive either one of those images on a card. And so I think that it is okay to start where you are. It is okay to choose whichever markers you prefer, whether that be the Ohuhu brand, whether that be Arteza's brand, whether that be the Alta New brand, whether that be Spectrum brand, whether that be Copic brand. I feel like the most important thing is learning a good technique and having good paper. And so I chose to do this video today just to kind of spread some information in hopes that I could give someone something that I didn't really have when I started. And part of that is because I wasn't tuned into the right people, because there are a lot of people who definitely show you this. So this is how the Spectrum image looks once we're done with that one. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to start with the Copic image. And again, here are the colors that we're going to use for the Copic images. And with Copics and with the Spectrums, because yellow is kind of that harder color to blend, that's why you see that I brought in earth tone colors to be the shadow colors for each of those. That is not a thing that changes despite which brand you're using. Now, I have not used all the brands. I have not used the Arteza brands, and I have not used Nuvo, and I haven't used the Alta New markers. I have used Ohuhu, Spectrum, and Copics. And I think with all of the brands that I have used, you would kind of be faced with the same thing of needing either an orange or a brown, depending on what color you're going for, to do your shadows for your yellows, because it's just that color that doesn't, if you want depth and dimension, you're going to have to go bolder, and there's not really a color in the yellow series that gives you that boldness. So with that being said, I'm trying my very best to go through and do the exact same thing on each of the petals, like going lightest to dark, darkest back out to light, and blending in my colors and making sure that I get a good blend on each of the petals, because I really wanted you guys to be able to see. Realistically, my goal was to show that you can get a pretty image despite whatever you're using if you take your time and create them. Now, these flowers were pretty large, so once I colored all of the images, it took a while. Like, I don't know whether I'm a slow colorist or whether I was having a slow day or what, but I feel like I was coloring for like 5 hours just to get these images done. But I really, really wanted this to be a nice card, not only because I wanted you guys to see that you can get really nice coloring with both of these markers, but also because this card is for a very, very, very special person. So if you guys don't mind, drop some happy birthday wishes in the comment for Kelsey. She's turning 20 on today, and I know her card may not get there on time because, oh my goodness, the way that mail has been running has been absolutely horrendous. I don't know if that's a problem for you guys, but like, letters seem to be taking 2 weeks to get to me, whereas normally I could get something in 2 or 3 days. So I'm not sure whether she will get her card today. However, I do know that I wanted this video to go up today so that I could wish her a very, very, very happy birthday. Send her all the hugs and all the love, all the way from Northern New York, all the way to Tennessee. So I hope you have an amazing birthday again, Kelsey. And that, 20 is a blast. You're 20 in 2020 in quarantine. That's funny. And hopefully your family is able to make this day pretty awesome for you, although I'm sure you can't do a whole lot. But it seems like things are starting to open up now. So, maybe we will have the opportunity to do something really soon. I don't know about you guys, but slowly here in northern New York, things are beginning to try to open back up. We are about to be going into phase 1 of reopening. So for me, that will look like I've been working from home for the last several weeks. I will start transitioning back to work, not on a full day schedule, but on a part day schedule starting next week. And we are going to be attempting to open back up some parks and hopefully like our gyms here on the base and barbershops and things like that. So those are some of the things that we're going to see in kind of the nearer future, like within the next 2 weeks, hopefully. I am concerned about how that's going to impact our numbers, but I'm prayerful that we will continue to do good things and we will continue to see decreases in numbers. However, on yesterday, we did find out that our children would not be returning to school this school year. However, I don't know what distant learning will look like for us because we still have 2 months remaining in the school year. Our kids would not get out of school until the end of June. So that could mean a lot more parenting and teachering. And I will tell you, I don't love it. You know, I have an 11-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And I'm telling you, trying to work and homeschool is rough. I'm doing it and I'm making the best of it. But I appreciate teachers, and I've always appreciated teachers, but that appreciation has gone to a whole nother level. And so I'm a little worried about how I will juggle the whole idea of returning to work and trying to juggle homeschooling if I am doing that outside of the home. So you guys keep me in your thoughts and prayers because you might hear about the struggle being really real here soon. So, as you guys can see, I'm about getting halfway done and I have sped this up 4 times. So if you guys can just imagine that if I have sped this up 4 times and I am coloring 1.5 flowers at this point, like you probably can really get a good idea of how difficult, not difficult, it wasn't difficult, it was actually fun, but how long it took for me to color all of these images. Now, I love these images because like Nuvo created, they're very detailed. There's a lot of petals, but there's also a lot of real estate. Like I feel like this is one of those flowers that would be absolutely amazing to do your coloring practice with, because you have the space to actually get in to those little nooks and crannies. And I will say that one of the things that I have come to appreciate about spectrum markers is that bullet tip when you're trying to get into those really small areas. And I think that I am going to start working toward replacing the chisel end of my Copic markers with a bullet tip, because I don't ever see any time that I would be using that chisel nib, because I don't do like backgrounds and things like that with my Copics. First of all, I'm too cheap. I'm not too cheap. I'm worried that I'm going to run out of ink quicker than I want to, and I don't want to have to refill them any quicker than I have to. So I'm not doing any backgrounds or any really large areas with them. So I think that it might serve me better to have that bullet nib on the end of my Copics. Now, let me also say that in the recent years, and this has been apparently after I purchased my spectrums, or maybe it was out and I just didn't know, because like I said, knowledge is power and I didn't have the knowledge. Spectrum has a brush tip as well, so if you have spectrums, you could change your chisel nib on those to a brush tip, which is one of the reasons that people typically prefer the Copics is because of the brush nib. Let me tell you, the brush nib is very much so smoother. It does, I feel like I can get a blend with less effort with the Copic brush tip. I also will tell you that as a person with hand problems, the Copics feel better. There's something about that, the squareness to the spectrums that are harder for me to hold for a longer period of time. Like I could visibly feel the relaxing in my hand as I switched over from the spectrum to the Copics. So here you guys go. Look, those two images are the images side by side. The left is the spectrum, the right was the Copic. Now I have gone in and I have cut them all out with my scan and cut. The left leaf is the spectrum, the right leaf is the Copic. I don't know if I had a great color combination for the leaves, but they were okay. I liked them. And again, here are your flowers, and I think they came out really well. And so what I did was I colored some of the images with the spectrums. I colored some of them with the Copics. Again, the right side is the spectrum, the left side is the Copic of these. Those are the first two images that I showed you. So I'm just going to take these images now and we're going to make a card with the spectrum and the Copic colored images. So I went in and had my Cricut cut me out a couple of vases because I wanted to create a vase. So I chose two vases. This vase has two pieces that glue on top of each other to create that that image. And then I had the Cricut cut out a frame and write my sentiment for me because this stamp set did not have any sentiments in it. So we're going to bring in some paper from Love from Lizi. This was my first time using some of this paper. Thank you, Maria, for that. I have two pieces of cardstock. I have my card base and I have a piece of mirror cardstock from Tonic Studios. Now I'm going to use this basket weave folder, embossing folder from Doris, and I'm going to emboss the mirror paper. And I love the way that this look. And I usually use this when I'm trying to create like that tablecloth look, which is what I'm going for today. I want to create kind of a tabletop look to the card. So I'm kind of measuring to see how much of the blue I'm going to want on the card base. And then I'm going to take that to my paper trimmer and I'm going to trim down the Love from Lizi paper and the Tonic Studios paper. This Love from Lizi paper, and I'll have it linked in the description, is called Vintage Bouquet. I looked and it was in stock at the time that I recorded this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and glue that down, and then I am going to add the blue piece to the bottom. And I just did like a 1.5 inch strip at the bottom because, like I said, the look that I was going for was wallpaper and a table. Tell me if I nailed it. So the blue piece should be like the table and the Love from Lizi paper should be the wallpaper in the background. And so I want it to look like this vase of flowers is sitting on top of a table. And the sentiment is kind of like a picture frame sitting on the table. So that was the look that I was going for. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue that down, and then I'm going to trim off the excess of the basket weave paper that we have here. Once I get that trimmed off, we can go in and start working on gluing down our vase. So first I'm going to kind of think about where I want the vase to be, and it's going to be closer to the right side of the card base, and I'm planning on having the frame toward the left side. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm using art glitter glue from May Made It, and I have my glue in a just a little tube from Amazon. So now we're going to start working on my floral arrangement. I love, if you can tell how huge these flowers are now, based upon this card base. And this is a 5x7 card base. These flowers are really, really big. And initially I thought I was going to be able to use all these flowers in a bouquet. That wasn't going to work. So I'm just kind of taking some of those florals and putting them where I want them to be. And I'm going to take my frame just to figure out where that needs to be placed, so I'll know how far over to have my vase placed. So once I get all of that kind of sitting where I want it to be, kind of getting a good dry fit to how I want the card to look, I am going to take some press and seal. And this is Glad press and seal, and I'm going to press that over my my floral image. That will kind of hold it together so I can start gluing it down. This helps so that I don't lose the placement of my images. So I just took a little bit of glue and dotted the glue all in the places that overlapped first. I'm going to set that to the side and let that dry. Now I'm going to start working on my frame, and I'm going to bring in some of my 3M foam tape by Scotch, and I'm going to cover the entire back of my frame because I want this to be popped up a little bit. So I'm going to go all the way up and down this frame and back it with foam tape. Now our frame, the sentiment that I have on the inside of our frame says 20 looks beautiful. 20 is beautiful on you. I thought that was very nice for a sentiment. And this paper that I used for the frame is a shimmer paper by Cricut, which I thought matched very well with the background and with the Cricut pen that I was able to use to write the sentiment. I thought it all matched really well with the color of this paper, this vintagey color from Love from Lizi. It kind of reminds me of like Dusty Rose. So there we go. We've got that part popped up. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue down the frame for the card, the vase. I'm going to glue down the vase. That's what we're going to do next. So we're going to get that nice and glued down. And I did put a little bit of extra glue on there just because this is kind of textured. I don't know if you were able to notice or not, but the background paper from Love from Lizi, as well as the texture from the embossing folder. So I didn't want that to pop up. So I did add a little extra glue. So now I'm going to add glue to all the exposed pieces of the flower bouquet and turn that over, and then you just saw me dabbing some glue on the pieces that were still sticking up once I took the press and seal off. So now I'm going to let that sit aside dry, and I've taken another 1-inch piece of the blue, and I want to take another strip of the Love from Lizi paper, and I'm going to create a border on the left side of my inside panel of my card base. So the inside panel of this card is going to measure 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. So I'm going to take that second base and I'm going to create a single flower on the inside. And I took my scissors and I fussy cut the white space from out the inside because I didn't like the way that looked. Now I'm going to take some sentiments from a waffle flower set that I have, as well as this Brutus Monroe set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Hello Beautiful, Happy Birthday, and It's Time. The It's Time says it's time to celebrate, but I covered the celebrate because I wanted to use the celebrate from the waffle flower set. So we get all of that stamped out. Hello Beautiful, Happy Birthday, time to celebrate. And now, because I had a little boo-boo, I decided to create some shouty little lines. What do you call those? You know, like the little speaker lines. I decided to put those all around. So then we glued down our vase and our flower, and that completes the inside of our card. Now the only thing we have to do is put this on a card base after we shimmer it up. So I'm bringing out my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and I'm putting the sparkle everywhere. And I'm going to bring out some Trinity Stamp sequin pack. Now this sequin pack was an extra that I got as a thank you for one of my purchases, so it doesn't have a name to it, but this is an amazing set. Like, I love these little it has like the melted ice halfback crystals as well as the sequins in the mix, and they are gorgeous, you guys, like absolutely gorgeous. So I kind of just sprinkled those all around my card base and put those aside to dry, and we're going to go ahead and glue the inside panel into our card base. And this card base is just a piece of 100-pound recollection paper in a light pink color. It came in a like one of those tones packs that has different shades of pinks, and so I usually use this for my card base because it's 100 pounds. It's a nice heavy weight, and I'm not doing any stamping or ink blending or anything on it. So it is a cheap alternative to using my expensive paper just for the actual card bases. I leave that for the papers that I'm actually working on. So I've trimmed off all of the excess of my card, and now we are going to glue the front of the card on to the card base. And once we get the front of the card glued onto our card base, that is pretty much it, you guys. Look at that shine. I love it. Once again, happy birthday, Kelsey. Please leave me a comment below. Let me know how you like this and what you thought about the Spectrum and Copics colliding. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.